In this demo, we'll showcase how financial services can unravel the web of connections from investment groups to individual securities, traversing through entities like persons, trusts, and accounts. Financial firms can utilize this to visualize investment pathways, assess group and individual asset balances, and identify key security holders, enabling a deeper understanding of investment structures and the distribution of assets within intricate financial portfolios for their clients. Currently, PuppyGraph can be launched in two main ways. The first way is through Docker, which is going to allow you to run PuppyGraph anywhere that you can run Docker. Secondly, you can also launch PuppyGraph through the AWS Marketplace, and soon you'll be able to launch PuppyGraph through the GCP Marketplace as well. Today, I'm going to show you how to run it in Docker. So for Docker, you can simply come to our PuppyGraph docs, click Getting Started, launching PuppyGraph in Docker, and then following our step-by-step tutorial here, it's just a couple steps. First, you'll need to make sure that you have Docker installed. Then, after Docker is installed, you'll then start a PuppyGraph container using this command. Just one note is that this command means that when your container is stopped, based on this --rm flag, this is going to completely remove the PuppyGraph instance. If you want to keep the instance so that you can start and stop it, just remove this -rm flag. Of course, if you want to make further tweaks to this run command, you can do that as well as needed. Once you run this command, the PuppyGraph image will be pulled down, and then the system will boot up. Once you've got PuppyGraph up and running, you can then proceed by logging into it. The default credentials will be PuppyGraph as the username and PuppyGraph123 as the password. Our next step, once we've logged in, is to upload our graph schema JSON. Now, there's other ways to do this as well. We can also use the create graph schema functionality, which is going to allow us to connect to a data source and then use the UI to design the graph schema. Or if you don't have a schema, you can also use one of our example schemas as well. That being said, today what we're going to do is use a JSON file that contains our catalog connectivity details, as well as how to map the data from our SQL data source over into PuppyGraph. Now, what does this schema.json look like? Well, it looks similar to this here. So you can see at the top, we've got a node for catalogs, and we can see here where the catalog's name is finance, type is iceberg, and then we've got our metastore details, which is going to allow us to connect to the underlying SQL data store. Then after that, we've got our vertices or nodes. So you'll see that we're able to attach a label as well as the mapped table source. So this is going to say where in the SQL data this data is going to come from. And then you can also see which attributes we'll attach to that node as well. So we've got quite a few of those. We've got person, trust, account, securities, and then we come down to our edges. And our edges is going to be an array of edges where we define a label. Then we have our map table source, and this here is similar to what we did with the nodes portion of things. But what we also have here, aside from attributes, is the to and from. So this is from a specific group node to a person node, and that's where that edge is going to be located. The same principles span the rest of our edges that we've defined as well. So we have person has trust, trust has account, and you can see that from trust to account. Now, once we've got this created, what we can do is load it up by clicking choose file that we just created, and then we'll click upload. Now this is going to upload this schema, and this is all that's needed to actually create that connectivity between PuppyGraph and our underlying SQL data source. After that, we're going to have the ability to query that data as a graph. So as you can see here, we've loaded that schema, and we can see each of those aspects. So here's our specific edges, specific nodes. So we can see our trust node, person node, group node, and we can also see the edges defined to connect those nodes. 5 nodes and 4 edges total in our schema. Now our next step will be to actually run some queries on this. So we can do that by going to the query tab here, and we can run our base query, and it's going to show us all our different person nodes linking up to our group nodes. And if I zoom out, But we likely want to do something just a little bit more specific to this data set. So what we'll do is we'll run a query that is going to count the number of unique paths from group to securities by traversing through person, trust, and account. And here is that query right here. So we have has label group, out person has trust, out trust has account, out account has securities, dot path, dot count. And I'm going to run this. We can see here that our result is 14,992,051 entries or unique paths from group to securities. Now, maybe I want to visualize all of these paths. So to do that, I'm going to run a subsequent query, which will actually allow us to visualize all paths from a specific group to securities. So we have a group here, which is Bowman, Garrett, and Porter. And then I'm following essentially the same paths that we did in our dot count query that we had below here. I'll run this, and now we can see a massive amount of connections in our data set here. I'm going to click clear, then I'm going to rerun this query. What happens is if you run subsequent queries, it will actually aggregate those results in the visualization here. And you can see that we can explore this data. If I click on a security, I can see the attributes associated with it, but I can also see the edges that are connecting it to other related nodes. So if I click on account here, you'll see that I can see those details now associated with that account. Now, I could look at this from a different perspective as well. And up here, you can see the different layouts that PuppyGraph supports. Currently, I'm on radial layout, but if I click vertical layout, you'll see that the data gets displayed differently, and I can explore these connections visually in a different way. So I can see each node, and then I can also see each edge coming off into and out of that node. So this gives a different way to look at that data. And there's also force layout as well. So by selecting these different types of layouts, I can explore the data in different ways. I could also run queries in the Cipher console, as well as run them in a graph notebook. I could also use the PuppyGraph visualization capabilities here, which is different than the query capabilities that show the visualization. But here, if I click start, I'm then able to explore it with a more traditional graph visualization approach as well. And you can see that I can zoom out in this, and as I zoom out, more data will then continue to load. Now what I can also do is create dashboards. So for folks who are maybe less graph capable, or maybe they're not as familiar with graph, this might even include non-technical people, I can create and store queries and those results as text displays here. I can store them as tables. I can also store them as visualizations as well. Now what I'm going to show you is how we can add one of these. So I've got another query that I want to run that, let's say, querying the top 10 groups with the highest total account balances. Let me click the add button here, click edit, title, and I'll call this top 10 groups by total account balance. And my query, which will be a gremlin query, will be this right here. So as you can see, has label group, and then I'm essentially filtering based on the balance that that group has total across all of their accounts, and then ordering it by values descending, and then I'm just going to grab the top 10. And then I can choose the display type. So I can either do this as text, as a graph, or as a table. In this specific instance, I'm just going to make this into a table because it probably makes more sense to show that data. Then I can do an optional column mapping if I'd like to as well, but this should be pretty straightforward for us. So I'll just click submit. Now you can see that this query is running. I'm going to then expand this, and we can see the result here. Now, each time this dashboard loads, this is going to refresh. So this will be essentially a live data stream for us. And if we want to make this bigger, we can also do that as well. So this is a great way to be able to create charts, visualizations, and these text widgets, which allows you to see a very concise dashboard of the data within your graph. And this covers the basics of what PuppyGraph is capable of doing based on a financial service data set that is currently stored in Iceberg. But of course, we support many different types of data sources. So regardless of the data source, your result here is going to be the same. For more information on PuppyGraph and how to get started, visit our website at www.puppygraph.com.